Slowly it rises.
Hey, it's ODB, the Lincoln Addict. We're going to take a look at this 1965 Lincoln Continental Convertible. I think this will maybe be a car that is going to be something that could be acquired by maybe more of the masses, depending on what the price gets up to. So we'll take a look. I do want to give you a quick update. Again, Bring a Trailer, one of my favorite sites. I did a deep dive review. This 64 Lincoln Continental Convertible sold 5 days ago. It topped out at $89,000. So a very, very strong price for what I believe to be a really nice car for the most part. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to jump back into this 65 Lincoln Continental Convertible, and I have kind of a refreshed template here that we'll take a look at, and then we'll jump back to the listing review. I'll try to make this as efficient as possible. I did not update the number here, so this is a 65, we know. Okay, so basically 65 we know is a very sought after year. There were 3,356 convertibles made, produced, if you will. That was only 28 more than 64. 64, 65 are very similar, which we'll take a look at. You could see here, this is the Hagerty valuation tool. I just took this screenshot today. I'm a Hagerty customer, so I have access to this. And the number 4 fair conditions at 25.5, which this car is probably going to come in because it's a convertible and a lot of people are looking for these cars. It's probably going to sell north of that, I would think. It's already halfway there and there's only 4 days left. This is the listing details from Bring a Trailer. It shows $92,000, which is probably accurate. It's the 430. It has been repainted, and then the rest of the information, for the most part's pretty standard. It does say dual exhaust with MagnaFlow mufflers. I can tell that the exhaust has been redone. That's good because that can anywhere be $1,000 to $2,000 value depending on where you live and how much a local place would charge. The Lincoln registry, this one has not been added, but I'll either submit it or the gentleman that runs the registry, he's pretty good about combing through a lot of these listings, or whoever submits it can do that. The door plate we'll look at is it's a 65. It was built in Wixom. It's a 4-door convertible, and it's the 15,252, which my apologies, I didn't change this number for my last presentation, but down here I did. It's so the 4 is always there, and we know it's 15,252. So it's 15,252 built for that model year. We'll look at what date it was built, which actually comes in November of 64. It was built. There's 40,230 total. That includes the sedans, convertibles, and limos. 465. Now this door plate looks very similar to the door plate on my 64. I think over the course of time, with these cars being resprayed and stuff, you can see just the faintness here of some of the original information. But this is oftentimes how the door plates will look. And the key here is L is November. So again, as Bring a Trailer lists, this car was built November 27th. And because it's a 65 model year, that means it was built on November 27th of 1964. So we'll take a look at the pros of the listing here in just a moment. Bottom line is you've got this front 3/4 photo. This photo makes this car look really, really nice. I think the key thing for me as we go through this is I would reinforce that I think this is going to be an opportunity for someone to get into a Lincoln Continental convertible with a more reasonable price for their budget. I love cars like this that are more original survivors. Back in 2017, I purchased 6 years ago, almost to the day, I purchased a blue 64 Lincoln Continental convertible that came from basically Illinois, Michigan area. And it was in similar condition to this, I'll say. But so I'll tell you that, for me, I love being able to get into a car like this at a little bit of a fair price, knowing that over the course of time, it's going to be a little bit of a project. So certainly that's the approach that I'll kind of have with some of the information that I share here. It was acquired in 2010. You can see all the information that we listed there. The car is in Illinois, DeKalb, Illinois, and I believe that's where this car has always stayed. They talk about the body was repainted in its current shade of blue under the current ownership. And a lot of this is kind of just your basic information, so I'm going to kind of go through this a little quick in terms of the text. This image here is really reminiscent of what my car looked like. And, the seats, they kind of have that original Survivor feel. The carpet looks pretty good. It could probably be steam cleaned and maybe even cleaned up more. But this interior is very similar to what I have in my car. And I actually like, as I've said in other videos, the authenticity of the originality, if you will. We can see right here it is missing. You could pick this up from some of the usual suspects. They're not super cheap for these little badges. It's a 65 only. I actually get custom ones reproduced, but that is something that sticks out to me there. This is all, again, standard information. It is an AC car, they mention. Here we get a chance to kind of look over the driver's shoulder in terms of the view, and you see, again, the originality. The cracking of these seats is definitely something that will happen, and you're either going to like this kind of ratty original feel, or you're going to want to redo it. But, a lot of this has to do with the conditioning of the leather and things like that over the course of time. I've seen a lot of these cars where, unfortunately, the seats will eventually crack and do this. 3,000 miles under the current ownership. So what that tells us is this gentleman has owned it, or this person has owned it for 13 years, give or take. So they didn't drive this car a whole lot. That's not necessarily a good or bad thing. It's just something to point out. What we can see in this photo here, this engine bay is very original. The only thing that sticks out to me is that it does have an aluminum radiator, which is fantastic. So this might have been a Champion radiator, which they started producing them a couple years back. And, that's a good thing. They were only a few $100s, but the amount of time and effort, to be able to have that is great. We do see it's an AC car. It does have the fan shroud, and it is a single reservoir master cylinder. Again, everything else for the most part looks original. Underneath these cars that are known to leak, this one actually doesn't look bad at all. I've seen far worse. Even with rebuilt engines, it's hard to get all of the leaks gone on these, if that makes sense. The stainless steel exhaust pipes were reportedly installed in 2020 with MagnaFlow mufflers. We get down to some of the nitty-gritty information here. This was an F light blue paint car, so it's very similar. Again, November 27th of 64, this one would have been built. And then some of the other information that we went through. There are these only two, unfortunately, videos, and we'll just kind of scan through them briefly. And it essentially just shows the top working, which I appreciate, these videos. There's the top cycle down, which you can imagine is just putting the top down. And I need to zoom out here. And then you basically have the top up cycle. And it must be pretty chilly because the guy's got a hoodie on there. We can see the back window is zipped down. More than likely, this back window is original. And if it's like anything in my 64, they are hard to see out of. So it unzips from the top. In case you did not know that, that's more than likely why it's unzipped. If we take a look at the photos here, the thing that stands out to me is, again, this respray of paint. This car looks really good to me in terms of, these photos. As I said, and I will continue to say, I'm a big fan of the original Lincolns. And this is a car that if I didn't have one, I would probably, depending on what the ending price is, I would possibly go after. Now, it's not to say that there aren't things that need to be done on this car. We're going to look at those here in just a moment. I like the tag Ollie, kind of ties in, I think, to some of the pop culture around, unfortunately, around the JFK assassination, unfortunately. But or it could just be another nod to something else. But as I've said in the past, you will get those little bubbles here and there. That's something that just happens on these cars. The dog legs don't look too bad. There could be mud, Bondo, body filler, if you will, in there. We don't really know. It doesn't seem to it doesn't seem to be. Now here you've got this little mark here, and this does look to maybe be, it's hard to tell if this is body filler or if this is primer, but they're doing a decent job of kind of showing you what you're getting into. These bumper ends can typically have these dents and dings. This can all be repaired and fixed if you wanted to get the stuff re-chromed and sent out. But again, that doesn't look too bad. Actually, this back window doesn't look bad at all. I did look at those photos earlier and I forgot. They do tend to get very tough to see out of, and that's the way my 64 is. You really can't see out of it at all. The door panels will tend to do this over the course of time. Again, this is kind of the originality of one of these cars. They're showing you here, typically a lot of these window switches, even if they work, they typically do have to be rebuilt. And there are guys out there that rebuild them for, I think, around $40 to $50 a piece. You go, hey, that's not bad. But if you look back here and you count how many are on this switch here, you've got 2, 4, 6, 7. You've got 2 on the passenger side. That brings you to 9. And then you have the 2 in the back, 10, 11. So these are the vent windows, left and right. And then these are the 4 windows, of course, as you would imagine. And then this is a lockout that allows for, to lock out the other windows. If we keep going here, again, just kind of looking at it, I mean, to me, I like the look and feel of this. I mean, some people would think it's kind of crazy, but I would clean this up as much as possible. I mean, it's insane. I watch people on YouTube that steam clean carpets and seats and stuff, and the people can work wonders on original interior. It's pretty crazy. These are the little guys I mentioned here in the front, at least the front passenger seat that is missing. And this car does have the rear seat belts. I believe that was an option. I don't believe it was in all of the Lincolns for 65. The red 65 I have, those were added by the owner at the time. They're showing you the imperfections of the car, which is key. And we can see under the hood. Under this hood doesn't look too bad. And we see here under the hood a little bit more. Now, what I want to do is just jump over here really quick. So the pros of this listing, 65 is very desirable. It's very identical. Well, it's very similar to the 64, but of course it does have some changes. The front end's a little bit different with the grille and things. This is a convertible, as I mentioned, that might be a tad bit more affordable depending on your budget. So, you're seeing these cars, like I showed you earlier, sell for $89,000, and you might go, hey, that's way out of my budget based upon where I am right now in life. This may be a car that you could potentially afford. Maybe you want to get one of these cars and over the course of time, you're going to put some time and money in it. That's what I did on my 64. Now, luckily for me, I bought my 64 back in 2017. Got to thank my friend Tony for finding it. And I knew that it was going to need everything. The car, for the most part, we saw that one trim piece missing on the interior, but for the most part, it does look like a complete car. The top works. It has an aluminum radiator, and it has a current owner of 13 years, so it's not just like a quick flip. Now, things to consider. We're going to look back and finish out this video here, but there is rust repair required, so we'll look to see how bad that is. There's no photos inside the deck lid. As I've said, these deck lids can rust out. Underneath the hood doesn't look too bad. So I would say if underneath the deck lid looks as good as underneath the hood, might be fine, but I would like to see photos of that. That's a question I would ask if you were looking to get involved in the chat within Bring a Trailer. It's a survivor car, so it's going to need a lot to bring it back. Now, I'm not saying that you couldn't potentially get this car, turn the key, and start driving it immediately, but with only 3,000 miles in the past 13 years, what we don't see is we don't see a driving video. Does the car maybe start, but does it really run good? I say that because when I bought my 64, they said it was a running car, but when we got there, we could barely keep it running enough to drive it on the trailer, literally. So, the gas tank was nasty. It needed new fuel lines. It had the wrong fuel pump, So like this car, I think, again, is a car you can get in at a good price, but it's really... We don't. There's still a lot of unknowns. We don't know, is it going to run and drive down the road with no issue? So there's just some things to think about. I'll talk about the last item here in just a moment, but here's the biggest concern isn't really necessarily all of the undercarriage. We do see some photos here, underneath the trunk floor and things. A lot of this looks solid. It's not scraped. This is the undercoating. You even look here and go, okay, the undercoating came off here. That's not bad for the most part. Even some of this surface rust here doesn't look to be, structural or anything like that. It could all be cleaned up. Same thing here. Again, looking at the floor pans, you would say, okay, the brace is still here. All of this looks authentic and original, not too bad. I would look up here and kind of see what's going on. It's kind of hard to tell if anything's been done here. Exactly, if that's, it's hard to tell exactly where that photo is from. You see a little bit more rust that appears to be mostly surface rust, but it's a little darker in color. You see some there as well, but the rest of it looks pretty good. But this is really where the concerns are. So in my 64, I had a little bit of rust on the floor pan just underneath where the feet would rest as you would drive and things like that. And my car also came from this same region where this car came from. So what I would tell you is that this isn't a total deal breaker for me. If it was me when I got this car, I would take out the seats. I would vacuum all underneath the carpet, and start to assess and see how much needs to be done. Any good metal person can go and make some floor pans and whatnot. Now we can see underneath the car, this is the drive shaft. This is the driver's side. So right above where this factory brace is at, this is the floor pan, and you might be able to get away with just doing the floor pans, but you can see a little bit of wetness here. And the darker color, it's hard to tell if a lot of this could just be maybe blasted, or use POR 15, which is paint over rust, and kind of clean some of this stuff up. It does get kind of darker in some of these areas, but certainly this floor pan on the driver's side, and more than likely the floor pan on the passenger side are probably going to need to be replaced. There are people that make those. There's been mixed reviews on the quality of the replacement floor pans, but again, you could have a local body shop more than likely make some for you if you needed to. Again, you see some of the discoloration up in here. They've done a good job of taking these photos, but I don't think a lot of this is structural. I think it's more visual, but it is hard to say just looking at the photos. My car wasn't in perfect condition, certainly. A lot of the coloration underneath my 64 was similar, maybe not as dark as some of what we're seeing here. But, if these cars were driven at all in kind of harsh conditions, they're going to have a little bit of the grittiness underneath them versus a car that was in California that never saw snow and things like that. It looks like someone at some point maybe took some sandpaper or something was going on here to kind of try to show, or maybe they were just trying to clean some of that surface rust off to kind of show, hey, it's not structural. Here you can kind of see this is the drive shaft up here, or the back of the tail shaft for the transmission. You can see this doesn't look the best here, but it's all, I would say, all fixable. And you could see the bottom. I often tell you guys to look here on the bottom of the bumper. Some of this can be cleaned up with different polishing methods, but certainly it's not going to, be show quality. So, the bumpers could be re-chromed and things like that if you really wanted to take it to that point. And then there's a little bit of literature. The thing that I would tell you is this, to me, is not a deal breaker. I think it's a car that, you could put some money in, and maybe I'll do a video in the future. I think people really underestimate how much money you can put in one of these cars and what you'll end up with. it wouldn't be insane to say that you could easily put 30 or 40 grand in this car. And I know some people would say, well, how? If I broke it down to you line by line item, you certainly can. If you think about, more than likely this car at some point is going to need to have all of the lines replaced and the rams and the cylinders if that hasn't been done. Certainly you could continue to use the top up and down. But if at some point those lines blow out, if you look at those prices, it's $1,500 to $2,000 for that kit. Then you have to install it, right? Let's say you want to put a new top on it. That's $1,000 plus the installation. And then you have a couple $100 for the wiring that goes to the top. And then you go, okay, well, that's not that much. And then you just start going down the line. A lot of times on these cars, and I'm just throwing this out there, they'll make, they'll have a noise in here where you have to redo the gaskets for the headers, the manifolds, if you will. If you do that, and let's say, some of the bolts break, and then you go, well, you know what, let's just pull the engine. Let's reseal the engine. And then before you know it, you're at 10, 15, 20,000 doing all of these different things. If the engine's out, you may as well clean the engine bay, and you might as well paint that. So it can start a down spiral in terms of the amount of time and money that you'll put in it. Certainly what I would tell you is, though, even with all that said, I'm still in on a car like this because in the price game that we see now and everybody wanting one of these cars, a lot of people, if they have the money or they're going to find the money somehow to buy a nice car, they don't want to go through all of the stuff that I just mentioned. I certainly see that. But to be able to get this, if the price is right, and be able to put some money in it and still enjoy it and make it a nice car, I would say is going to be awesome. But I want to see underneath the deck lid. I want to know, do the rear auto drops work? I want to hear it run. Is it making that exhaust, that exhaust leak sound that can kind of be annoying? Those are some things that certainly need to be addressed or, at least asked and kind of understand. But I love Bring a Trailer. I think they do a great job. There's a lot of good photos here to give us some good insight into this car. And let me know what you guys think. Am I on point? Am I going crazy? Let me know. ODB, the Lincoln Addict, I'm out of here. Take care, everyone.